The parable of the empty boat stands as a foundational and profoundly illuminating teaching within Zen Buddhism. It's an elegant, yet deceptively simple narrative that offers a radical reframe of how we experience and react to the world around us. At its heart, the story unveils a universal truth. Much of our emotional distress, our anger, frustration, and resentment does not originate from external events themselves, but rather from the interpretations and intentions we project onto those events. This teaching isn't merely about avoiding conflict, it's about understanding the very mechanism by which our minds generate suffering, and crucially, how to disengage from that self perpetuating cycle. The scene is set with an idyllic image of tranquility. A man deeply enamored with the serene solitude of the river routinely embarks on evening boat rides. This ritual is his sanctuary, a sacred time for quiet contemplation, a communion with nature where the gentle current and the golden hues of sunset wash away the day's anxieties. It is a state of profound inner peace, cultivated through mindful presence and an appreciation for the simple beauty of existence. The river itself serves as a metaphor for the flow of life, typically gentle and unthreatening, allowing the man to drift in harmonious accord. However, this idyllic scene is shattered by the appearance of another boat, seemingly on a direct collision course. The immediate rational response is one of caution and communication. Be careful, the man calls out, his voice still modulated by politeness. Yet the boat persists, unwavering in its trajectory. This lack of response, this apparent disregard, triggers a subtle shift in the man's internal state. The initial concern transmutes into a burgeoning sense of irritation, then escalating into overt frustration. The perceived intent behind the approaching boat, a perceived carelessness, a lack of consideration, perhaps even outright aggression, begins to fill the mental empty vessel of the situation. His voice sharpens, demanding, "Move aside. You're going to crash into me." The man's once peaceful evening is now thoroughly contaminated by the very emotions he is projecting, trapping him in a vortex of rising anxiety and self righteous anger. The climax of the story, the inevitable collision, serves as the ultimate test of the man's internal state. As the boats make contact, the man is not merely angry, he is primed for confrontation. His body language, if described, would speak volumes: clenched fists, a tightened jaw, a racing heart, a narrowed gaze, all physiological hallmarks of a mind consumed by fury. He is ready to verbally assault the presumed negligent boater, to unleash the torrent of his accumulated frustration. But then the profound, instantaneous shift occurs. His eyes land upon the other boat, and the truth reveals itself in stark simplicity. It is empty. There is no one, absolutely no one, at the helm. It is merely a vessel adrift at the mercy of the river's current. In that singular revelatory moment, the man's intense anger vanishes completely. The emotional inferno he had meticulously stoked within himself collapses, leaving behind a residue of foolishness and, crucially, a profound insight. The external circumstances, the collision itself, remain unchanged. The physical reality of the event is precisely as it unfolded. What fundamentally transformed was his understanding of the situation. With the absence of perceived malicious intent, the fuel for his anger evaporated. There was no one to blame, no one to accuse, no one to hold accountable for the disrespect. The external event, stripped of its projected narrative, became an impersonal phenomenon, incapable of generating personal offense. This powerful narrative directly illustrates the Buddha's timeless teaching. You will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. This isn't a moral judgment or a threat of divine retribution. Rather, it is a profound observation of cause and effect within our own minds. When we cling to anger, resentment, or hatred, the primary recipient of that toxic energy is ourselves. We are the ones who suffer the heightened physiological stress, the clouded judgment, the erosion of inner peace. The punishment is not external. It is the immediate self inflicted pain of a mind consumed by negativity. Every moment spent fuming is a moment stolen from genuine peace, a moment where our inner world burns from a self ignited flame. The pervasive tendency to react defensively and aggressively, as exemplified by the man in the boat, is deeply rooted in what Zen Buddhism refers to as ego clinging or attachment to a separate self. Our ego, that constructed sense of I and mine, constantly seeks to validate its existence, assert its importance, and defend its perceived boundaries. When an external event like a car cutting us off or a perceived slight from a colleague is interpreted by the ego as a direct attack or disrespect, it triggers an immediate visceral defense mechanism. The ego constructs a compelling narrative. How dare they do that to me? They are clearly inconsiderate, malicious, incompetent. This self-serving story places us at the victimized center of every perceived affront, fueling our indignation and justifying our anger. It's a fundamental misperception where an impersonal event is personalized, becoming a battleground for the ego's survival. Let's broaden this lens to our daily lives. How many empty boats do we encounter without realizing it? Consider the driver who merges abruptly. Perhaps they're distracted by an urgent family matter, or lost, or rushing to an emergency. The colleague who seems to ignore your greeting might be consumed by a personal crisis, deep in thought, or simply having a difficult day. The friend who hasn't replied to your message could be struggling with overwhelming personal challenges, illness, or simply needing space. Yet in countless such instances, our ego mind swiftly rushes to fill these informational voids with assumptions of malice, neglect, or disrespect. We create intricate, often negative narratives about others' intentions, and then we react to those narratives, not to the neutral reality of the event. This constant projection creates unnecessary emotional turmoil, turning minor incidents into major internal dramas. Zen practice offers a powerful antidote to this pattern through the cultivation of mindfulness. Mindfulness in this context is the practice of intentional, non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. By meticulously observing our thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations as they arise, we develop the capacity to create a crucial space between stimulus and response. We learn to catch ourselves in the act of filling empty boats. The physical sensations of anger, the tightening in the chest, the quickening of the breath, the heat rising, the narrowing of vision, become potent bells of mindfulness. These physiological cues serve as immediate alerts, prompting us to pause, breathe, and investigate the underlying narrative before reacting. Instead of being swept away by the current of emotion, we learn to anchor ourselves in bare awareness, observing the storm without becoming the storm. The profound wisdom of the 13th century Zen master Dogen underscores this point. To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. This teaching points to the ultimate liberation that comes from releasing the ego's tenacious grip. When we begin to forget the self, to loosen our ego's constant need to assert, defend, and control, we gain the clarity to see empty boats for what they truly are: impersonal occurrences in the grand unfolding tapestry of existence. This forgetting isn't a loss of identity, but a profound expansion beyond a limited, constricted self concept. It's a liberation that allows us to perceive events without the distorting lens of personal affront, recognizing them as simply phenomena occurring in the vast river of life, devoid of intentional slight or personal meaning. The Buddha's metaphorical warning resonates profoundly. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. This highlights the direct, immediate, and self inflicted nature of suffering caused by clinging to negative emotions. Each time we allow anger to fester, we are the first and most direct recipient of its destructive heat. This self inflicted suffering diminishes our inner peace clouds, our judgment, and hinders our ability to respond skillfully and compassionately to life's myriad challenges. By consciously choosing to recognize the empty boats in our daily interactions and refusing to fill them with projections of malicious intent, we begin to liberate ourselves from this unnecessary pain. We allow our minds to return to their natural state of clarity, spaciousness, and tranquility. This understanding is not merely intellectual, it's a profound shift in our relationship with ourselves and the world. Tonight, as you reflect on your day, bring to mind any moments when you felt a surge of anger, frustration, or a sense of being wronged. Can you now, with the wisdom of the empty boat, re examine that situation? Can you discern whether your mind filled an empty vessel with assumptions and judgments about others' intentions? Perhaps the perceived slight it was not an intentional act, but a simple, impersonal occurrence. In that recognition, can you feel a subtle yet profound shift? A quiet sense of freedom that emerges when you choose to let go of that self created story. As the Buddha wisely stated, peace comes from within, do not seek it without. The profound tranquility we so desperately seek is not found by changing external circumstances or by demanding others conform to our expectations. It is in fact already available to us, lying dormant within, waiting to be rediscovered when we cease to burden ourselves by filling empty boats with the heavy weight of our ego-driven narratives. This realization is the first crucial step toward a more peaceful, liberated, and truly compassionate existence. The parable of the monk and the tiger is perhaps one of the most vividly dramatic and existentially profound stories in the Zen tradition. Far more than a simple narrative about danger and escape, it serves as a stark, visceral allegory for the human condition, meticulously illustrating how our minds habitually oscillate between the anxieties of the future and the regrets of the past. The central revolutionary insight it offers is that even in moments of seemingly insurmountable peril or despair, the exquisite beauty and profound joy of the present moment remain accessible, waiting to be fully tasted and embraced. This story is a direct invitation to reorient our consciousness, shifting from a preoccupation with what was or what might be to a radical, appreciative immersion in what is. The setting of the story immediately evokes a sense of tranquil wisdom, a serene Zen monastery nestled deep within a lush, ancient forest. Here resides a wise and peaceful monk whose daily rhythm is defined by long, meditative walks through the surrounding woods. These walks are not merely physical exercise, they are a profound spiritual practice moments of deep communion with nature, where the monk contemplates the intricate beauty of the world and the timeless teachings of the Buddha. In the solitude of the forest, he finds an unparalleled sense of peace, a space where he can connect intimately with the fabric of existence itself. For this monk, the very act of walking, breathing, and observing the forest is a form of enlightenment, a constant conscious engagement with the present moment. He embodies the ideal of finding sacredness, not in grand distant revelations, but in the mundane, the immediate, the infinitely unfolding now. The idyllic calm, however, is brutally shattered. During one such contemplative walk, the monk is abruptly yanked back to stark reality by the terrifying roar of a tiger. This isn't a distant abstract threat, it is immediate, visceral, and utterly real. His heart, usually calm, begins to pound a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Turning, he is confronted by the primal spectacle of a large, ferocious tiger charging directly toward him, its eyes locked onto him with predatory intent, its powerful body moving with terrifying speed through the thick underbrush. The immediate instinctual response is pure, unadulterated fear compelling him to flee. He sprints down the narrow mountain path, his robes billowing behind him, but the tiger is relentless, gaining ground with each terrifying stride. The gap between predator and prey narrows, and the monk's hope dwindles with every breath. Desperate, his eyes scan for any possibility of escape. He spots it, a thick, seemingly sturdy vine dangling precariously down the side of a sheer cliff. Without a flicker of hesitation, driven by the raw imperative of survival, he grabs the vine and begins to clamber down, hoping to find a ledge, a cave, any refuge from the jaws of the tiger above. This is the epitome of human struggle, a last-ditch effort to defy an overwhelming threat. However, as he descends, clinging tightly to the fragile vine, his gaze falls upon the scene below. His heart plummets even further into the abyss of despair. At the bottom of the cliff, pacing with unnerving patience, is another tiger, its gaze fixed upward, waiting for him to fall. The monk is trapped, suspended in a horrifying tableau, a tiger above a tiger below, and him dangling precariously in between. His situation is utterly hopeless, a perfect metaphor for the moments in life when we feel completely cornered with no apparent way out, suspended between an inescapable past and a terrifying future. It is in this precise, impossible moment of existential suspension that the story introduces its most profound teaching. Hanging there, utterly powerless, facing inevitable destruction, something remarkable happens. The monk's mind, perhaps overwhelmed to the point of breaking free from its usual patterns of fear and planning, registers something new, a tiny wild strawberry plant growing out of a crevice in the cliffside just within his reach. On this plant, a single perfectly ripe red strawberry glistens. In that instant, the frantic mental chatter, the calculations of escape, the fear of the tigers, the weight of his predicament ceases. Instead, a moment of pure, unadulterated presence takes over. He reaches out with one hand, carefully plucks the strawberry, and brings it to his mouth. He bites into the fruit, and its flavor explodes on his tongue, exquisitely sweet, fresh, and perfect. For that brief, luminous interlude, the world contracts to the pure sensory experience of that strawberry. All that exists is its taste, its aroma, its texture. Despite the mortal danger surrounding him, the monk finds a profound, undeniable peace in that single mindful moment. He has, with astonishing clarity, accepted that he cannot change his circumstances, but he can still fully experience the present, finding perfect beauty and joy, even in the face of imminent death. A subtle smile touches his lips, recognizing this fleeting taste of sweetness as a powerful, undeniable reminder of life's inherent beauty, accessible even in the most precarious of situations. This profound moment of mindful savoring directly illustrates the core of the Buddha's timeless wisdom. Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. This teaching is not an idealistic platitude, but a pragmatic guide to alleviating suffering. The monk's predicament vividly portrays the human condition. We spend much of our lives metaphorically suspended between two tigers, the regrets, grievances, and wounds of our past, the tiger above having chased us there, and the fears, anxieties, and uncertainties about our future, the tiger below waiting for our fall. Our minds designed for survival and planning relentlessly pull us away from the only moment we ever truly possess this one. Our thoughts convince us that happiness, peace, and security lie in either resolving past hurts or meticulously securing future comforts. Yet, as the monk demonstrates, true peace and profound joy are available only in the present moment, irrespective of external conditions. Why do we struggle so intensely to stay present? Zen Buddhism illuminates several deeply ingrained mental habits that contribute to this pervasive struggle. Firstly, our minds evolved as sophisticated survival mechanisms, constantly scanning for threats and planning for contingencies. While invaluable for physical survival, this perpetual vigilance becomes a spiritual liability, generating an endless stream of what if scenarios and if only regrets that pull us away from direct, unmediated experience. Secondly, we are often caught in a cycle of anticipatory suffering where the mind extrapolates current difficulties into catastrophic future narratives. We project past failures onto future endeavors, creating anxiety about events that may never materialize, or that if they do will unfold differently than imagined. Thirdly, and perhaps most subtly, is our tendency to believe that happiness is a future destination, a reward earned after all problems are solved. This belief system keeps us in a state of perpetual striving, always looking ahead for contentment, rather than recognizing its ever-present availability. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh often articulated this truth with disarming simplicity. The present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it. This strawberry represents the boundless simple joys that are always available to us, even amidst the most formidable challenges. It's the warmth of sunlight on our skin, the melodic sound of a bird's song, the rich taste of a simple meal, the comforting embrace of a loved one, or the miraculous, steady rhythm of our own breath. These are not grand, extraordinary pleasures, but the subtle, ordinary miracles that permeate our daily existence. Yet we are often so consumed by the tigers of past regrets and future anxieties that we become blind and deaf to these moments of grace, missing the very essence of life as it unfolds. The challenge then is not to eliminate the tigers, but to cultivate the capacity to taste the strawberry while the tigers are still present. Zen practice, particularly Zazen seated meditation, is a profound training in cultivating this capacity for presence, what the Japanese call ichigo ichi-e, yichi ihui, one time, one meeting. This concept beautifully encapsulates the unique and unrepeatable nature of each moment. It's a powerful reminder that every breath, every sensation, every interaction is a fleeting, precious gift that will never occur again in precisely the same way. When we truly grasp this profound preciousness, the desire to be fully present for each moment becomes not a chore, but an inevitability. Regardless of external circumstances, this deep appreciation naturally anchors us in the here and now, fostering a sense of reverence for the unfolding of life. It's about being fully alive to this second, recognizing its inherent value. The Buddha's wisdom echoes across centuries, offering a profound guide for a life well lived. The secret of health for both mind and body is not to mourn for the past, worry about the future, or anticipate troubles, but to live in the present moment wisely and earnestly. This isn't merely spiritual advice, it's a foundational principle for holistic well being. This profound invitation urges us to meticulously observe where our attention habitually drifts. Are you constantly replaying past conversations, mentally revising them, or endlessly rehearsing future scenarios, attempting to exert control over what is inherently uncontrollable? The practice then is to gently, repeatedly guide your awareness back to the strawberry of the present moment, the immediate sensory experiences available right now. This conscious redirection of attention is not a forceful suppression of thoughts, but a compassionate, intentional choice to anchor oneself in the tangible reality that is unfolding, recognizing it as the only true ground of being. Tonight, as you lie down and the thoughts of tomorrow's responsibilities or yesterday's lingering regrets inevitably arise, remember the monk and the strawberry. What small, exquisite joy might you savor right now, even amidst uncertainty? Perhaps it is the gentle, rhythmic rise and fall of your breathing, the comforting weight of the blanket settling over your body, the quiet hum of your surroundings, or the profound stillness that permeates this very moment. By consciously choosing to notice and appreciate these strawberries, these tiny perfect details of your present experience, you are not ignoring your challenges, but rather cultivating the very peace you seek. You are demonstrating a profound act of self compassion, shifting your focus from the anxieties of what might be or could have been to the undeniable reality of what is. The Buddha famously taught, "There is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path." This isn't a clever turn of phrase, it's a radical redefinition of our pursuit of well being. It implies that contentment isn't a destination reached after overcoming all obstacles, but a quality of presence infused into every step of the journey itself. By consciously and mindfully savoring the strawberries that appear along our path, the fleeting moments of beauty, connection, and simple sensory pleasure, we discover that peace isn't a remote reward waiting for us after the tigers disappear. Instead, it's a profound state of being available in their very presence. It's a recognition that life in all its messy, unpredictable, and sometimes terrifying glory offers continuous opportunities for profound joy and serenity, if only we are willing to open our hearts and senses to them. This understanding transforms mere existence into a rich, vibrant tapestry of experience, where challenges become opportunities for deeper appreciation and the journey itself becomes the ultimate source of peace. The Buddha's parable of the two arrows is arguably one of the most foundational and transformative teachings in the entire Buddhist tradition. It offers a remarkably clear and practical framework for understanding the nature of suffering, and more importantly, how we can profoundly alter our relationship with it. This isn't a complex philosophical treatise, but a direct experiential insight into the mechanics of our own minds. The story reveals a potent truth while pain is an inescapable facet of human existence. The vast majority of our suffering is a secondary self created layer entirely optional. By grasping this distinction, we unlock the potential to cultivate deep inner peace, even amidst life's most formidable challenges. The setting is serene, a peaceful forest clearing where the Buddha sits with his disciples, the gentle sway of trees and the melodious chirping of birds creating a backdrop for timeless wisdom. The Buddha, a master of profound and accessible teachings, often guided his followers on the nature of suffering and the path to enlightenment. On this particular day, a troubled disciple, burdened by the weight of existential angst, approaches him with a heartfelt question. Master, the disciple begins bowing respectfully. I don't understand why we suffer so much in this life. Pain seems to follow us wherever we go. Why is this so? And how can we possibly find peace amidst such pervasive suffering? The disciples' earnestness and frustration are palpable, reflecting a universal human yearning for relief from inner turmoil. The Buddha, with his characteristic kindness and profound understanding, perceives the confusion in the student's eyes, recognizing it as a question that resonates with all sentient beings. With gentle wisdom, the Buddha begins to explain, drawing a vivid analogy that cuts through intellectual abstraction to the core of experience. Imagine, he says, that a person is struck by an arrow. This arrow causes pain, and that pain is inevitable. This is the first arrow. The disciples nod their minds easily, grasping this initial concept. They understand that the first arrow symbolizes the unavoidable difficulties, the inherent adversities of life, the searing physical pain of an illness, the sharp sting of a sudden injury, the hollow ache of loss, the unexpected betrayal, the crushing weight of disappointment. These are the raw, unadulterated facts of existence, delivered by circumstances beyond our immediate control. No one, regardless of status or spiritual attainment, is immune to the impact of this first arrow. It is the fundamental, often harsh reality of being alive in an impermanent world. But now, the Buddha continues, his voice deepening. Imagine that after being struck by the first arrow, the person is then struck by a second arrow. This second arrow does not come from outside. It is created by the mind. It is the anger, fear, frustration, sorrow, self-pity, or resentment that follows the initial pain. This is the second arrow. The Buddha pauses, allowing his words to sink into the minds of his attentive listeners, letting the profound implications of this distinction resonate. You see, he emphasizes, while the first arrow is unavoidable, the second arrow is optional. This single statement encapsulates the revolutionary core of the teaching. The first arrow represents the inherent pain that all beings experience, the challenges and hardships from which none can truly escape. But the second arrow, the layer of suffering generated by our reaction to that initial pain, is something we have immense power to choose to avoid. It is the narrative we build, the judgment we cast, the resistance we mount against reality. The disciple listens intently, a glimmer of understanding beginning to dawn. The Buddha elaborates. When we experience physical or emotional pain, the first arrow we often inadvertently exacerbate it by layering on a second mental form of suffering. We become angry at the injustice of the pain, resentful that it happened to us, anxious about its implications, or consumed by a deep sense of sorrow and despair. These reactive emotions, anger, frustration, self blame, rumination, fear of the future, do not alleviate the original wound. They deepen it, infect it, and prolong its agony. Instead of simply acknowledging and accepting the pain as a natural part of life, we resist it fiercely. And in that very act of resistance, we paradoxically amplify our suffering, shooting a second arrow directly into our own hearts. When we are struck by the first arrow, the Buddha reiterates, we must recognize it for what it is, a natural, unavoidable part of life. But we must also recognize the second arrow. It is the arrow we create ourselves. Through mindfulness and understanding, we can choose not to let the second arrow pierce us. The disciple, now fully engaged and eager for practical guidance, asks Master, how can we avoid the second arrow? How can we prevent our minds from adding to our suffering? The Buddha responds with a warm, compassionate smile, offering the essential remedy. By practicing mindfulness. Through mindfulness, we can observe our thoughts and emotions without becoming attached to them. When we feel pain, we can acknowledge it without judgment. We can accept that pain is part of life, but we do not need to dwell on it or create more suffering through resistance or negative thoughts. In this way, we can stop the second arrow before it strikes. The answer is not complex or esoteric. It is rooted in the simple yet profound practice of present moment awareness. The concise yet profound statement, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, encapsulates the very essence of the two arrows parable. While we cannot avoid all forms of pain in life, the first arrows will undoubtedly find us. We possess immense power over the extent to which we suffer because of that pain. The key lies in distinguishing between the initial, unavoidable sensation and the subsequent self-generated mental and emotional reactions. Why do we so readily shoot these second arrows at ourselves? Zen Buddhism points to several deeply ingrained aspects of our conditioned mind that perpetuate this pattern. Firstly, there's our deeply ingrained habit of aversion, the mind's automatic recoiling from anything unpleasant. When pain arises, whether physical or emotional, our instinctive response is to push it away, to deny its reality, or to wish it weren't there. This resistance creates a layer of mental tension, a subtle but persistent struggle that compounds the original discomfort, turning simple pain into complex suffering. It's like trying to push against a strong current. The harder we push, the more exhausted we become. Secondly, our tendency towards identification plays a crucial role. We merge so completely with our experiences, thinking I am in pain, rather than recognizing there is pain being experienced. This subtle linguistic and cognitive difference has profound implications. When we fully identify with pain, it becomes all-consuming, defining our entire reality and coloring our perception of everything else. It feels as if we are the pain. However, when we observe it with a degree of space, recognizing there is pain in this body, it becomes just one aspect of a larger experience, allowing for a sense of perspective and non-identification. This detachment is not indifference, but clarity. Thirdly, and perhaps most insidiously, is our mind's habit of proliferation, or papanka in Pali. This is the mind's incessant tendency to generate endless thoughts, narratives, judgments, and commentaries about our experiences. A simple headache can quickly cascade into a torrent of worries. What if this is serious? What if it gets worse? Why does this always happen to me? I won't be able to focus at work tomorrow. Each of these subsequent thoughts, each fear, each self criticism, each what if, is another second arrow piercing us again and again, creating layer upon layer of unnecessary suffering atop the original simpler pain. This mental noise amplifies and perpetuates distress. These mental habits operate largely unconsciously, which is precisely why the Buddha so vehemently emphasized mindfulness as the primary remedy. Through consistent mindfulness practice, we develop the cultivated capacity to observe these patterns as they arise. We learn to recognize the crucial difference between the unavoidable first arrow of pain, the raw sensory experience, and the optional second arrows of our mental reactions, the stories, judgments, and resistances we layer on top. The moment of recognition is the moment of choice. The Buddha's teaching, what you think you become, what you feel you attract, what you imagine you create, powerfully underscores the creative power of our own thoughts and reactions. Each time we respond to pain with aversion, identification, and proliferation, we are actively creating suffering. We are reinforcing the neural pathways of negativity. Conversely, each time we meet pain with mindful awareness and acceptance, we are actively creating an opportunity for healing, growth, and liberation. This is not to say we can wish away pain, but we can transform our relationship to it. Consider a personal disappointment, perhaps a rejection, a professional failure, or a significant loss. The first arrow is the actual event itself and the natural immediate emotional response. It evokes sadness, frustration, grief. The second arrows then might include thoughts like, this always happens to me, globalizing a single event, I'll never succeed, catastrophizing the future, I should have done better, self criticism, and guilt, or this isn't fair resistance to reality, and dwelling on injustice. Each of these subsequent thoughts and judgments creates additional suffering, compounding the original disappointment far beyond its initial impact. The burden becomes exponentially heavier, not because of the original event, but because of the mental weight we add to it. Zen teacher Charlotte Joko Beck famously said, pain is not something to be avoided. It's something to be experienced without resistance. This profound statement encapsulates the heart of working skillfully with the first arrow. It doesn't advocate for stoicism or emotional suppression. We don't deny the pain or pretend it doesn't hurt. Instead, we bring a curious, compassionate, and open attention to the experience itself without adding the second arrows of judgment resistance or elaborate self-defeating storytelling. It's about feeling the pain, fully allowing it to be present without pushing it away or getting lost in mental narratives about it. The Buddha taught, if you are facing in the right direction, all you need to do is keep walking. The right direction here is not away from our pain, but courageously towards it, with an attitude of mindful acceptance. By turning toward difficult experiences with mindfulness, we develop the profound capacity to be with them skillfully without compounding them with unnecessary second arrows. This practice builds resilience, wisdom, and genuine peace. It allows us to process our experiences cleanly rather than carrying the lingering burden of our negative reactions. Tonight, as you settle into rest, bring a gentle awareness to any sensations in your body, any lingering emotions, or any restless thoughts arising in your mind. Can you begin to discern the difference between the first arrow, the raw sensation or emotion, and the second arrow, your mind's reaction, judgment, or story about it? Can you meet the inevitable pains of life, a nagging physical discomfort, a subtle emotional tenderness, or simple mental restlessness with kind awareness rather than resistance? By doing so, you are actively choosing to disarm the second arrow, liberating yourself from its sting. As the Buddha said, the way is not in the sky, the way is in the heart. The path to freedom from suffering isn't found in escaping our human experience, but in courageously and wisely meeting it with compassion, acceptance, and the discerning awareness of the two arrows. This is true liberation. The parable of the mustard seed is one of the most poignant and deeply empathetic teachings attributed to the Buddha. It transcends simple spiritual instruction, offering a profound journey of emotional transformation from isolating personal grief to universal acceptance. This story doesn't just address the inevitability of death, it illuminates the powerful truth that our most intense suffering often arises from our resistance to impermanence and our inability to recognize the shared human experience of loss. It's a pathway to finding peace, not by escaping pain, but by integrating it into a broader understanding of existence. The narrative introduces us to Kisa Gotami, a young woman described as kind, compassionate, and deeply devoted to her family. Her life, however, takes a tragic and shattering turn when her only child, a beloved son, falls gravely ill and passes away. This is the ultimate first arrow of pain, a raw, visceral, and utterly devastating loss that shatters her world. Overcome with an unbearable, all consuming grief, Kisa is utterly unable to accept her son's death. Her attachment, fueled by the primal bond of motherhood, transforms her pain into a desperate denial. She cradles his lifeless body in her arms, wandering from house to house, her heart a raw wound, frantically seeking anyone, anything that could possibly bring him back to life. Each desperate plea, "Please help me, my son is dead. Is there anyone who can cure him?" is met with the same heartbreaking truth: there is nothing we can do. With every rejection, her sorrow deepens, her hope dwindles, and the ache in her heart becomes almost unbearable. Her personal tragedy feels singular, a unique and unjust burden weighing solely upon her. One day, Kisa's relentless grief-stricken journey leads her to a wise elder who, recognizing the depth of her suffering, takes pity on her. "Go to the Buddha," the elder advises gently. "Perhaps he can help you." A flicker of hope ignites in Kisa's desolate heart. She rushes to the Buddha, renowned for his boundless compassion and profound wisdom, finding him seated calmly under a Bodhi tree, surrounded by his disciples. Falling to her knees, she lays her son's lifeless body before him, her voice trembling with the raw agony of her plea. "Master, please bring my child back to life. I cannot bear this pain." The Buddha, observing her with immense compassion and deep understanding, does not immediately offer platitudes or dismiss her grief. He sees her intense suffering, but he also discerns that she needs to learn a profound experiential truth about life and death, a truth that cannot be taught through words alone. After a moment of thoughtful contemplation, the Buddha speaks softly, outlining a condition that on the surface seems to offer hope, but implicitly carries the weight of a universal lesson. I can help you, Kisa, the Buddha states, but first you must bring me something. Go into the village and bring me a mustard seed. Kisa's heart, previously on the verge of breaking, leaps with renewed hope. Yes, master, I will bring you a mustard seed, she exclaims, her voice shaking with relief and desperate optimism. But before she can leave, the Buddha adds a crucial, seemingly simple, yet profoundly challenging caveat. The mustard seed must come from a household that has never experienced death. If you can find such a household, bring the seed to me, and I will bring your child back to life. Kisa, still blinded by her fervent hope and personal grief, nods, eagerly convinced that such a simple task must surely be achievable, and sets off on her seemingly straightforward mission. Kisa Gotami begins her quest, going from house to house in the village, her hopes buoyed by the Buddha's instruction. At the first door, she explains her request. Please, can you give me a mustard seed? But it must come from a home where no one has ever died. The kind woman who answers looks at Kisa with sad, knowing eyes. I am sorry, she replies, but my husband passed away last year. Undeterred, Kisa thanks her and moves to the next house. Again, she makes her earnest request, only to be met with, I am sorry, but my mother passed away many years ago. House after house, Kisa Gotami knocks on doors, her initial hope slowly, inexorably giving way to a dawning, painful realization. At every single house, she hears stories of loved ones lost: a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a child. Each story, each shared tale of sorrow, chips away at her singular perception of grief. As the day wears on and the sun begins its descent, Kisa returns to the Buddha. She is empty-handed, not having found a single mustard seed that meets the Buddha's specific impossible criterion. But she returns with something far more valuable than a seed, a new understanding, a profound shift in her perception. She kneels before the Buddha, her heart no longer filled with desperate, clinging hope for a reversal of fate, but with a quiet, emerging sense of acceptance. Master, she says, her voice now calm, devoid of the frantic desperation that had consumed her. I could not find a single house that has never known death. Every family, without exception, has experienced the loss of someone dear to them. Now I understand that death is a part of life, and no one can escape it. This moment marks her transition from intense personal anguish to a shared universal understanding of impermanence. The Buddha nods gently, a serene affirmation of Kisa's hard-won wisdom. Kisa, he replies, you have learned an important truth. Death is inevitable, and suffering comes to all who are attached to the things of this world. But by accepting the impermanence of life, you can find peace. Your grief was not unique. It is shared by all beings. This is the nature of existence. With these words, Kisa Gotami realizes that her suffering, though intensely personal and painful, was not hers alone to bear. She had been blinded by the singular, isolating intensity of her personal grief. But now she perceives that all people experience loss, that impermanence is a universal law, not a personal curse. This new, expansive understanding allows her to finally release her son's body and bury him with dignity, finding a sense of profound peace and acceptance in the face of life's inevitable changes. She had sought a miracle, but found wisdom instead. The Buddha's teaching, Everything that has a beginning has an ending. Make your peace with that, and all will be well, forms the very foundation of Kisa Gotami's transformative journey. Her story powerfully illuminates one of the most challenging yet ultimately liberating truths of existence: nothing lasts forever. Our relentless attempts to deny this fundamental reality, our desperate clinging to permanence in an inherently impermanent world, only serve to amplify and prolong our suffering. This deep seated craving for things to remain unchanged, for pleasant experiences to endure, for loved ones to stay with us, always creates a fundamental tension that manifests as anguish when the inevitable cycles of life unfold. Why do we resist the truth of impermanence so fiercely? Zen Buddhism points to our ingrained craving for permanence tanha in Pali as the root of much suffering. We construct an illusion of stability, a desire for the pleasant to remain pleasant, the beautiful to remain beautiful, and most powerfully, for those we love to remain with us perpetually. This craving, when unmet by the fluid reality of existence, creates a fundamental tension that expresses itself as grief, anxiety, and despair. Like Kisa, our initial response to loss is often denial. We refuse to accept what has happened, expending enormous physical and emotional energy trying to reverse the irreversible. This denial is a natural initial stage of grief, but when we become stuck in it, it prevents us from moving through the healing process, trapping us in a state of prolonged anguish. The Buddha's genius in this parable lies in his pedagogical approach. He didn't immediately lecture Kisa on the philosophical concept of impermanence. Instead, he designed an experiential teaching that allowed her to discover this truth for herself. This is a far more powerful and enduring form of learning than mere intellectual assimilation. His seemingly simple request for a mustard seed from a house untouched by death forced Kisa to directly confront the universality of loss. The Buddha famously said, "The root of suffering is attachment." In Kisa's case, her attachment to her son was not simply love. It was a desperate, unyielding clinging that could not accommodate the reality of his death. Her journey to find that impossible mustard seed helped her recognize that attachment to permanence, when applied to impermanent phenomena, is fundamentally futile and leads only to continued sorrow. Every household, regardless of its apparent wealth, happiness, or blessings, had been visited by death. This universal nature of loss connects us all in what Buddhists often refer to as the fellowship of suffering, or the shared experience of impermanence. When we truly experientially understand that loss touches everyone, that it is a universal aspect of being human, our own grief, while still undeniably painful, becomes less isolating. It shifts from a unique personal tragedy that sets us apart to a shared experience that connects us to all beings. We recognize our individual pain as a thread in the great collective current of human existence, fostering empathy and reducing the sense of singular victimization. This doesn't diminish the pain, but it changes its quality, making it less overwhelming. The 14th century Zen master Basui offered a penetrating insight: to see the truth, leave desire behind. If you do not give up desire, you will not see the truth. Kisa's initial overwhelming desire to bring her son back to life prevented her from seeing the broader, liberating truth of impermanence. Only when she exhausted this impossible desire, when she fully embraced the reality of her situation, could she begin to accept what was and find a deeper peace. Interestingly, The Buddha did not try to console Kisa with promises of an afterlife or a reunion with her son in another realm. Instead, he gently guided her toward accepting the natural order of things, that what is born will die, what comes together will eventually separate. This acceptance is not resignation or defeat. It is a profound alignment with reality, which is the only true ground upon which genuine healing and inner freedom can begin to blossom. The Buddha taught, "The trouble is, you think you have time." This poignant reminder of life's inherent brevity and preciousness is not meant to be morbid or depressing. On the contrary, this acute awareness of impermanence can paradoxically infuse our lives with greater appreciation, urgency, and presence. Knowing that every moment, every relationship, every experience is fleeting can deepen our engagement with life, urging us to cherish what is here now rather than postponing joy or taking things for granted. It encourages us to live more fully, love more deeply, and let go more gracefully. In your own experience of loss, whether it be the physical death of a person, the ending of a significant relationship, the loss of a career or opportunity, or even the passing of a particular phase of life, can you now recognize the profound wisdom of the mustard seed lesson? Can you observe how your suffering might be intensified by a subtle or not so subtle resistance to the natural ever flowing current of impermanence? By bringing mindful awareness to this resistance, you create the space for a different response. The Buddha said, "When you realize how perfect everything is, you will tilt your head back and laugh at the sky." This perfect imperfection includes the cyclical nature of life and death, growth and decay, coming together and separating the very rhythm of existence itself. When we accept this grand unfolding dance, a profound liberation occurs. Tonight, as you reflect on the losses you've experienced, and perhaps those you fear in the future, remember Kisa Gotami's arduous, yet ultimately liberating journey. Can you find a measure of comfort in the universality of impermanence? Can you begin to see how accepting this truth might ease your suffering, not by diminishing the reality of your loss, but by placing it within the vast shared and deeply human experience of impermanence? As the Buddha profoundly taught, in the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. The mustard seed parable guides us toward that third essential wisdom, the profound grace of letting go, allowing us to find peace amidst the beautiful, inevitable flux of life. The parable of the farmer and the horse is a cornerstone of Zen wisdom, offering a profound teaching on the nature of equanimity. Upekkha in Pali, in the face of life's relentless and unpredictable changes. It challenges our deeply ingrained human tendency to immediately label events as good or bad, revealing how such judgments often blind us to the larger unfolding tapestry of interconnected causes and conditions. This story encourages a radical shift in perspective to hold every experience, whether seemingly fortunate or unfortunate, with an open mind, recognizing that its true meaning is often revealed only with the passage of time. In a small, unassuming village, nestled among gentle rolling hills, lived a humble farmer. He wasn't particularly wealthy or powerful, yet he was renowned throughout the community for his extraordinary calm demeanor and diligent hard work. His neighbors observed that no matter what twists and turns fate threw his way, his inner peace remained unshaken. His signature response to any news, whether seemingly positive or negative, was a simple, thoughtful shrug accompanied by the phrase, "We'll see." This quiet equanimity set him apart, a beacon of stability, in a world often swayed by immediate emotional reactions. His farm was modest, sustained by the labor of his hands and the invaluable assistance of his single horse, a crucial partner for plowing fields and transporting his meager crops to market. One morning, the village was abuzz with news. The farmer's horse, his sole beast of burden and a vital asset to his livelihood, had inexplicably broken through its fence and vanished. The stable lay empty, a stark symbol of sudden misfortune. Neighbors eager to offer sympathy and perhaps a touch of schadenfreude rushed to his home. "What terrible luck!" they exclaimed, their voices dripping with pity. "Your only horse is gone. How will you manage the farm now? This is such a tragedy." They saw only the immediate loss, projecting their own anxieties and judgments onto his situation. The old farmer, however, listened to their lamentations with an unruffled composure. He simply looked at his neighbors, a faint knowing smile playing on his lips, and replied, "Maybe." His response baffled them. How could he be so indifferent, so seemingly apathetic to such a clear misfortune? They shook their heads, convinced he was in denial, failing to grasp the gravity of his loss. Just a few days later, to everyone's astonishment, the horse returned. But it wasn't alone. It brought with it a magnificent herd of wild horses from the mountains, which had followed it back to the farm, drawn by some unseen force. Suddenly, the farmer, who had possessed only one horse, found himself the owner of a dozen powerful, untamed animals. The village erupted in excitement. The neighbors, ever quick to shift their judgment, rushed back their previous pity, replaced by effusive congratulations. "How wonderful!" they exclaimed, their faces alight with envy and admiration. "What incredible fortune! Now you have so many horses. You'll be the richest farmer in the village." The farmer once again received their enthusiasm with his characteristic calm. He thanked them for their kind words, but his response remained the same, "Maybe." Once more, the neighbors were confused. Surely this was an undeniable stroke of good luck, a divine blessing. Why wasn't he jubilant, celebrating his newfound wealth? His consistent, measured response defied their dualistic framework of good and bad. The narrative continues its unpredictable turns. A few days after the wild horse's arrival, the farmer's only son, a strong and capable young man, decided to try his hand at taming one of the spirited new horses. During the attempt, he was violently thrown to the ground, sustaining a severe injury, a badly broken leg. The injury was debilitating, rendering him unable to help with the demanding farm work for a long time. News of the accident spread quickly, and the neighbors returned their expressions, now a mixture of sympathy and somber confirmation of their earlier predictions. "What bad luck," they lamented. "Your son has broken his leg, and now he cannot help you. With the harvest coming, this is truly unfortunate. It's a disaster." As before, the farmer acknowledged their concern with his usual tranquility, his eyes holding a depth of understanding they couldn't fathom. His reply, yet again, was the simple, non-committal "maybe." The villagers were by now thoroughly bewildered by the farmer's unyielding composure. Every significant event, regardless of its apparent valence, evoked the same nonchalant, balanced response. They couldn't comprehend his seeming indifference to the dramatic swings of fortune. The ultimate twist in the tale brings the farmer's wisdom into sharp relief. A few weeks later, the entire country was plunged into turmoil. A brutal war broke out, and military officials swept through the villages, conscripting all able bodied young men into the army. Many of the villagers' sons, strong and healthy, were forcibly taken away to fight in a dangerous conflict from which many would never return. The wails of sorrow filled the air as families said their heartbreaking goodbyes. However, when the soldiers arrived at the farmer's house, they observed his son with his severely broken leg. Recognizing his inability to serve, they passed him over, leaving him safely at home with his father. Once again, the neighbors descended upon the farmer's home, their faces etched with a profound mix of personal sorrow for their own lost sons and awestruck admiration for what now appeared to be the farmer's almost miraculous good luck. They cried, "How fortunate you are! Because of your son's injury, he was spared from the war. What amazing luck!" And with the weight of all previous events lending immense power to his words, the farmer replied, his voice calm and resonant, "We'll see." The story concludes, leaving the profound implication that life's events are never truly fixed in their meaning. They are always part of a larger unfolding narrative. The Buddha's teaching, nothing is permanent, everything is subject to change, being is always becoming, forms the profound philosophical bedrock of the farmer's unwavering wisdom. His consistent, unperturbed response of maybe is not an expression of apathy or indifference. Instead, it reflects a deep experiential understanding that life is in a state of perpetual flux, an unending dance of transformation. What appears unequivocally favorable or unfavorable in one fleeting moment may reveal itself to be entirely different, even opposite in the next, as unforeseen consequences ripple through time. The farmer embodies the ultimate non attachment to outcomes, recognizing that the current moment is but a single frame in an infinitely long film. Why do we, like the farmer's neighbors, rush to categorize events as good or bad? Zen Buddhism attributes this to our mind's pervasive habit of dualistic thinking. Our cognitive default is to sort experiences into binary categories: desirable or undesirable, fortunate or unfortunate, success or failure. This habitual categorization provides a simplistic sense of order and control in a complex world. However, this dualistic framework creates an emotional roller coaster, elevating us to elation when things align with our preferences and plunging us into devastation when they don't. The farmer's story brilliantly exposes the flaw in this rigid thinking: we never possess the complete picture. Our limited perspective prevents us from seeing how today's apparent misfortune might, in the grander scheme, avert tomorrow's disaster, or how today's blessing might inadvertently lead to tomorrow's unforeseen challenge. The full story is always unfolding beyond our immediate grasp. The concept of non-judgment in Zen Buddhism, as exemplified by the farmer, does not equate to indifference or apathy. The farmer was not emotionally detached from his life, his horse, or his son's well-being. Rather, he cultivated what the Buddha called equanimity, upekkha, a balanced, imperturbable perspective that remains steady and clear amidst life's inevitable ups and downs. He cared deeply about his livelihood and his family, but he refused to allow his inner peace and mental equilibrium to be at the mercy of constantly changing, often unpredictable external circumstances. His maybe was an active practice of non reactivity, a conscious choice to remain open to life's inherent mystery rather than clamping down with premature judgment. Zen master Seng Tsan in the Hitin Shin Ming succinctly captured this wisdom. The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When we cease clinging to our rigid ideas of how things should be, when we let go of our insistence that life conform to our desires, we discover a deeper, more profound kind of freedom. We open ourselves to life's inherent wisdom, which often unfolds in ways our limited ego driven perspective cannot possibly anticipate. This liberation from preference allows us to meet whatever arises with less resistance and more grace. The Buddha's teaching, do not overrate what you have received, nor envy others. He who envies others does not obtain peace of mind, speaks directly to the comparison trap. How often do we evaluate our own circumstances, our luck, by comparing them to others, concluding that we are either blessed or cursed based on these often superficial comparisons? The farmer's neighbors consistently assessed his situation through their own lenses of good and bad fortune, fueled by their own desires and fears. The farmer, however, remained remarkably free from these limiting comparative perspectives. His inner state was not contingent on external validation or the perceived fortunes of others. Our modern lives are rife with opportunities to practice this maybe mindset. Consider the promotion you didn't get, which later led you to a more fulfilling opportunity elsewhere. The painful ending of a relationship that in retrospect created crucial space for greater self-discovery and personal growth. The unexpected illness that forced you to reassess your priorities, leading to a profound shift in values. The financial setback that, though agonizing at the time, ultimately taught you resilience and resourcefulness. In retrospect, many of us can identify seeming misfortunes that ultimately paved the way for profound growth or unexpected blessings. The 13th century Persian poet Rumi beautifully captured this paradox. What appears to be a curse may be a blessing, and what appears to be a blessing may be a curse. The farmer embodied this understanding not as a mere intellectual concept, but as a lived reality, a constant conscious practice of open awareness. His maybe was not passive resignation, but active wisdom, the deep recognition that life's full story is always, always still unfolding. The Buddha famously said, "In the sky there is no distinction of east and west." People create distinctions out of their own minds and then believe them to be true. Similarly, the labels of good luck and bad luck are largely our own mental creations superimposed upon the neutral flow of events. Reality itself is simply a continuous unfolding of causes and conditions, neither inherently positive nor negative. It is our interpretation, our judgment, our attachment to a specific outcome that imbues events with emotional charge. The farmer's equanimity liberates him from this mental overlay, allowing him to simply be with what is. Tonight, as you reflect on recent events in your life, those you've instinctively labeled as good luck or bad luck, try holding them with the farmer's gentle, open-ended, "we'll see." Notice how this perspective might subtly ease the anxiety surrounding negative situations, allowing for possibilities beyond your immediate forecast. Conversely, observe how it can temper an excessive attachment to positive ones, reminding you of their transient nature. Can you find freedom in suspending judgment about how things should be and instead allow them to simply be. As the Buddha taught, with our thoughts, we make the world. The farmer's maybe reminds us that we always possess a profound choice in how we interpret and relate to our experiences. This choice, more than any external circumstance, has profound implications for our inner peace, stability, and overall well being. It's a continuous invitation to align with the dynamic, unpredictable, yet inherently perfect flow of existence. The story of the Buddha and the angry man is a quintessential Zen teaching serving as a powerful demonstration of non reactivity and the profound freedom that comes from emotional mastery. It's not merely a tale about handling external aggression, but a deep dive into the internal mechanics of anger itself, revealing that its destructive power lies not in the offerer, but in the recipient. This narrative fundamentally shifts our understanding of personal responsibility for our emotional states, empowering us to choose peace over self inflicted suffering. The scene unfolds in ancient India during the time when the Buddha traversed villages and towns, tirelessly spreading his profound teachings. His wisdom, compassion, and serene presence drew a vast number of followers, many of whom, inspired by his insights, left their homes to embrace the monastic life under his guidance. One day, while the Buddha was teaching a group of disciples in a peaceful forest, a man approached him. This man's eyes burned with a palpable anger. He had heard about the Buddha's growing influence and perceived it as a threat fueling his jealousy and resentment. Consumed by these destructive emotions, he resolved to confront the Buddha, to publicly insult him, and undermine his authority in front of his devoted followers. As the Buddha sat calmly under the shade of a Bodhi tree, radiating an unshakable tranquility, the angry man stormed up to him, his voice laced with venom. "You are nothing but a fraud." The man hurled his words, sharp as daggers. "Who do you think you are? You may pretend to be wise and enlightened, but you're just deceiving people." The torrent of insults continued, aimed directly at undermining the Buddha's reputation and person. Yet the Buddha remained utterly calm and unbothered by the man's harsh words. His expression didn't change. His serene demeanor was undisturbed. He didn't flinch, didn't argue, didn't defend himself, and offered no verbal response to the man's seething fury. This non-reaction, however, only served to infuriate the man further. Seeing the Buddha's complete lack of agitation, the man's anger escalated. He shouted even louder, his voice raw with frustration. "How can you just sit there acting like you're above everyone else? Do you think you're better than me? I refuse to respect someone like you." His accusations grew more personal, more desperate to elicit a response to shatter the Buddha's composure. Despite the man's escalating fury, the Buddha remained silent and serene, simply watching him with a gaze filled not with judgment, but with profound compassion. He observed the man's suffering, recognizing the pain and confusion driving his outburst. Finally, after several minutes of relentless shouting, the angry man's energy began to wane. His voice grew hoarse, his body tired. He had fully expected to provoke a fiery debate, a defensive retort, or at least some sign of distress from the Buddha. But the Buddha's unyielding, peaceful demeanor utterly confused him. Exhausted and bewildered, the man finally caught his breath and demanded, "Why won't you say anything? Why won't you defend yourself? Don't you care what I think of you?" The question hung in the air, a final desperate attempt to draw the Buddha into his emotional drama. The Buddha looked at him with profound kindness, his voice soft, calm, and resonant, with an unwavering inner peace. Tell me, the Buddha asked gently, his question cutting through the residual tension like a cool breeze. If someone offers you a gift and you decline to accept it, to whom does the gift belong? The man, puzzled by this unexpected turn, paused to consider. It would still belong to the person who offered it. He responded, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. If I don't take it, the gift remains theirs. The Buddha nodded serenely, a subtle affirmation. Exactly. And in the same way, if you offer me your anger and I do not accept it, then who does the anger belong to? The man was utterly stunned by the Buddha's simple yet devastatingly profound words. In that instant, he realized the truth. His barrage of insults and his seething anger had not affected the Buddha at all. The Buddha had refused to accept the gift of his negativity. Instead, the anger, the resentment, the frustration had remained the man's own heavy burden to carry, consuming him from within. The Buddha continued, his voice steady. If I refuse to accept your insults and your anger, they fall back on you. You are the one who suffers from them, not me. I choose not to be troubled by your words. Instead, I choose peace. The man stood in silence, deeply contemplating the Buddha's insight. He grasped that his anger, which he believed was directed outwards, had in fact been a poison he was drinking himself. It had consumed him, but it had no power over the Buddha, who remained unaffected by it. In that moment of profound realization, the man understood that holding on to his anger only harmed himself, not the Buddha. Feeling a deep sense of shame and humility, he bowed his head. Master, he whispered, a new sincerity in his voice, I see now that my anger has only caused me pain. How can I learn to be at peace as you are? The Buddha smiled warmly, his boundless compassion shining through. Anger is like a hot coal you pick up with the intention of throwing it at someone, but in the process, you burn yourself. Let go of the coal. Let go of your anger. Instead, practice mindfulness, compassion, and understanding. Through these, you will find peace. From that day forward, humbled and transformed, the man sought to practice the Buddha's teachings, gradually learning to release his anger and cultivate inner peace. The Buddha's teaching, you are not punished for your anger, you are punished by your anger, is a direct, incisive insight into the nature of reactive emotions. It reveals precisely why carrying anger, resentment, and hatred causes us such immense suffering. When we harbor these toxic emotions, we are in essence administering a poison to ourselves. The perceived target of our anger often remains largely untouched or affected to a lesser degree, while our own internal world is ravaged. Every moment spent in anger is a moment stolen from genuine peace, a moment where our vital energy is diverted from healing growth and connection towards destructive rumination and agitation. Every thought of revenge is a self-imposed prison sentence. Why do we cling so tightly to our anger, even when it so clearly harms us? Zen Buddhism identifies several powerful psychological and cultural factors that make anger particularly difficult to release. Firstly, there's our pervasive sense of righteousness. We often deeply believe that our anger is justified, that the wrong committed against us or the perceived injustice is so egregious that our anger is not only deserved, but necessary to hold on to. We mistakenly conflate letting go of anger with condoning the behavior that triggered it, or with being weak. But the Buddha's teaching profoundly challenges this assumption. We can establish clear boundaries, seek justice, and protect ourselves without poisoning our own minds and bodies with reactive, self destructive emotions. Our anger often serves as a defensive shield, but it traps us within its confines. Secondly, there is our deep seated identification with our emotions. We don't say, I am experiencing anger. We say, I am angry, or I am a resentful person. This subtle linguistic shift has profound implications. It makes the emotion seem inseparable from our very sense of self. When someone suggests we let go of anger, it can feel like they're asking us to let go of a fundamental part of who we believe ourselves to be. This fear of losing identity creates tremendous resistance to release. Zen practice through techniques like mindfulness meditation teaches us to create a crucial space between our awareness and our emotions. We learn to observe anger as a passing phenomenon, a wave in the ocean of consciousness, rather than being swallowed by it. This allows us to recognize that while the emotion may be present, it does not define our entire being. Thirdly, our cultural conditioning around anger significantly influences our relationship with it. Many of us are inadvertently taught that anger equates to power, that it motivates action, and that it commands respect. We witness it being used to get results, albeit often through destructive means. We fear that without anger, we might become passive weak or be taken advantage of. The Buddha's response to the angry man, however, offers a powerful counter-narrative. It demonstrates true power. This is not the reactive, volatile force of aggression, but the stable, immovable strength of equanimity, an unshakable inner peace that remains untouched by external provocations. It is a strength derived from self-mastery, not from control over others. The Buddha's ancient and eternal law, hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed, directly challenges our deeply ingrained assumption that anger and hostility are effective responses to mistreatment. Does meeting hostility with hostility ever truly resolve the underlying causes of conflict, or does it merely perpetuate endless cycles of reactivity, escalating suffering for all involved? The Buddha suggests a radical alternative, a response born of compassion, wisdom, and refusal to participate in the cycle of mutual destruction. The metaphor of the unaccepted gift is particularly illuminating and practical. It suggests that emotions like anger, criticism, blame, and judgment, when directed towards us, are essentially offerings of energy. Crucially, we possess a choice about whether to accept these offerings. When someone directs negativity towards us, we can choose to absorb this energy, internalize it, and allow it to disturb our peace. Or we can consciously decline the offering, allowing it to pass by without taking root, thus maintaining our inner equanimity. This doesn't mean becoming emotionally disconnected or indifferent to injustice. The Buddha didn't ignore the angry man. He remained fully present, engaged, and responsive. But his response emanated from a place of profound compassion and unwavering wisdom rather than reactive ego defense. This is the very essence of non-reactivity in Zen practice, not withdrawal from engagement, but engagement from a fundamentally different quality of awareness, one rooted in inner freedom. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught a beautiful practice called embracing anger with mindfulness, which perfectly aligns with the Buddha's teaching. This involves recognizing anger when it arises, acknowledging its presence without judgment, and then breathing with it, treating it with the same gentle care we would show a crying baby. Rather than suppressing anger, which often leads to internal festering, or expressing it mindlessly, which often leads to external harm, we acknowledge its difficult presence with kind awareness. We investigate its causes, understand its impermanent nature, and allow it to soften and dissolve naturally, much like observing a cloud passing through the vastness of the sky. This transforms anger from a destructive force into an object of mindful inquiry and ultimately release. The Buddha's teaching, if you truly loved yourself, you would never harm another, points to the profound interconnectedness of self care and care for others. When we react with anger, we harm ourselves first and most directly polluting our own inner landscape. Choosing peace over reactivity is not a selfless sacrifice or an act of submission. It is, in fact, the most profound and enlightened form of self care. By releasing the burden of anger, we liberate our own minds, creating space for clarity, compassion, and genuine well being to flourish. This act of self liberation then naturally extends outwards, transforming our interactions with others and contributing to a more peaceful world. Tonight, as you reflect on interactions that have triggered anger or resentment in you, take a moment to experiment with the Buddha's powerful gift metaphor. Can you recognize that you truly have a choice about whether to accept the gifts of others' negativity, whether those are insults, criticisms, or perceived slights? Can you feel the subtle but profound sense of freedom that emerges when you consciously decline these offerings, allowing them to pass through without taking root in your heart? Remember the Buddha's poignant words: holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. In releasing that coal, in choosing the path of non acceptance, you not only free yourself from unnecessary suffering, but also create the possibility for genuine resolution, understanding, and a deeper, more profound peace to emerge. This is the true power of emotional mastery, not in controlling others, but in mastering oneself. The story of the monk and the teacup is a remarkably elegant and profoundly liberating Zen parable that directly confronts one of humanity's deepest fears, the fear of loss. It offers a radical perspective on impermanence, not as a cause for sorrow or detachment, but as the very foundation for true appreciation and inner peace. By understanding that everything is inherently already broken, we unlock a capacity for joy and presence that remains elusive when we cling to the illusion of permanence. The setting is a quiet Zen monastery nestled serenely amidst the tranquil mountains. Here lived a revered monk, admired by his students, not just for his profound wisdom, but for his extraordinary calm demeanor and his consistent ability to embody the present moment, seemingly undisturbed by the chaos of the world. His daily life was a living meditation, silent contemplation, the mindful ritual of tea, and sharing profound lessons with his eager students. He was a master of presence, his every action infused with a deep awareness that belied the simplicity of his surroundings. One afternoon during their customary tea ceremony, the monk performed an action that would forever alter his students' perception. He held up a simple, unassuming clay teacup, gazing at it for a long, contemplative moment. The cup was beautiful in its unadorned simplicity, a soft, earthy color, a perfectly rounded shape, seemingly robust and intact. The students, curious about their master's silent contemplation, waited eagerly anticipating a deep teaching about the tea, the ceremony, or perhaps the nature of beauty itself. After a few moments of silent observation, the monk smiled gently and uttered a statement that immediately sowed confusion among his disciples. This teacup is already broken. The students exchanged bewildered glances. Their eyes clearly perceived a whole undamaged, perfectly intact teacup. How could their wise master make such an obviously false statement? One of the younger students, unable to contain his bewilderment, respectfully spoke up. Master, he inquired, the teacup is not broken. It is perfectly fine. Why do you say it is already broken? His question, though direct, conveyed a genuine desire to understand the paradox. The monk, his smile unwavering, gently placed the teacup on the table before him. In my mind, he said softly, his voice imbued with profound acceptance, this teacup is already broken. It may seem whole now, but one day, perhaps tomorrow, perhaps years from now, it will break. This is inevitable. When I understand that it is already broken, I can fully appreciate it as it is without clinging to it. I can enjoy drinking tea from it, knowing that its life is temporary, and when it shatters, I will not suffer from the shock of loss, for I have already accepted its impermanence. The students fell into a profound silence, their minds grappling with the weight of his words. They slowly realized that the master was not merely speaking about a teacup. He was offering them a deeper, more radical lesson about the very nature of life itself. The monk continued gently expanding on his profound insight. Everything in life is like this teacup. All things, no matter how beautiful, how precious, how seemingly enduring, are impermanent. We cannot hold on to them forever. When we truly understand and internalize this truth, we are paradoxically free to enjoy life fully, without the underlying anxiety of losing what we have. We can appreciate each moment, each relationship, each experience, knowing that it too will eventually pass. And when it is gone, we will not suffer profoundly from its absence, because we have already accepted its inherent impermanence. His words painted a picture, not of resignation, but of liberation through acceptance. One of the older students, whose face now showed signs of thoughtful contemplation rather than confusion, posed a crucial question. Master, he asked, does this mean we should not love or care for things because they will one day be gone? Does it mean we should become detached or indifferent? The monk gently shook his head. No, he clarified. It means the opposite. When we accept the impermanence of all things, we can love them more deeply, precisely because we are not holding on out of a desperate fear of loss. We love and appreciate them for what they are in this very moment, cherishing their fleeting existence. We understand that they are part of the natural flow of life, blooming and fading. In this way, we can live with a peaceful heart, unburdened by the relentless attachment to things that are bound to change. The Buddha's teaching, all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with insight, one becomes disenchanted with suffering, lies at the very heart of the teacup story. This profound truth points to one of the most liberating yet often challenging aspects of Zen practice, embracing impermanence, not merely as a philosophical concept, but as a deeply lived reality. It's a call to observe the constant flux of existence with clear, open eyes, and to allow that observation to transform our relationship with clinging and suffering. Why do we resist the truth of impermanence so fiercely? Zen Buddhism, identifies our fundamental craving for permanence or tanha thirst, clinging, as the root of much of our suffering. We mistakenly perceive things as solid, separate, and lasting, when in fact they are fluid, interconnected, and transient. This inherent misperception leads to what Buddhists call attachment, or clinging our desperate, often unconscious attempt to hold on to things that by their very nature cannot be held. This isn't just about physical objects, it extends to experiences, relationships, identities, and even our own physical bodies. Consider how this attachment manifests in daily life. We become deeply attached to our possessions, fearing their loss, damage, or degradation. We cling to relationships, desperately trying to prevent them from changing, from evolving, from ending. We hold on to our youth, our health, our capabilities, resisting the inevitable and graceful process of aging and decay. We even become profoundly attached to our ideas, opinions, and identities, defending them fiercely, as if they were permanent, unchangeable fixtures of our being, rather than fluid constructs that evolve with experience. This pervasive clinging creates a constant state of anxiety and fear, an underlying tremor of apprehension about the inevitable. The monk's radical declaration that the teacup is already broken offers a profoundly different way of relating to impermanence. Instead of denying or resisting change, he embraces it preemptively. By acknowledging the inevitable end of all things, the inherent fragility of existence, he liberates himself from the anxious struggle of trying to prevent the unpreventable. This is not pessimism. It's a form of profound, clear-eyed realism that paradoxically enhances his appreciation of the present moment. Because he knows the cup will break, he can taste the tea in it with heightened awareness, cherishing every sip, every contour of the cup with a deeper reverence. The anticipated loss frees him to be fully present for the existing beauty. The Buddha's teaching, the world is afflicted by death and decay, but the wise do not grieve, having realized the nature of the world, doesn't encourage callousness or emotional detachment from caring. Rather, it points to a different quality of caring, one not distorted by the impossible expectation of permanence. The monk doesn't love his teacup less because he knows it will break. He loves it more precisely because its existence is fleeting and precious. This understanding allows for a love that is free from the grip of clinging, a love that embraces the beauty of temporary presence without the burden of possessiveness. Zen master Shunryu Suzuki beautifully explained this paradox. When we understand the truth of impermanence and find our composure in it, we find ourselves in the midst of nirvana. This composure isn't achieved by resigning ourselves to loss in a passive defeatist way, but by fully embracing the fundamental nature of reality. It's a composure that allows for deep engagement with life, precisely because we're not constantly fighting against its fundamental, ever-changing characteristics. We are aligning with the flow rather than resisting the current. In practical terms, how might we cultivate this already broken perspective in our daily lives? We can begin by consciously noticing our attachments, the people, things, and circumstances we most fear losing. Instead of trying to suppress this fear, we can gently acknowledge the temporary nature of these precious aspects of our lives. We can practice saying to ourselves, "This too will pass," not as a dreary fatalistic reminder, but as an active invitation to cherish the present moment. It's a call to infuse each interaction, each experience, with heightened awareness and gratitude, precisely because it is fleeting. This practice transforms fear into a catalyst for deeper appreciation. The Buddha taught, neither fire nor wind birth nor death can erase our good deeds. This teaching points to another aspect of the already broken wisdom. While all material things, including our physical bodies, are impermanent, the impact of our actions, the quality of our presence, and the wisdom we cultivate endure beyond physical forms. By focusing on cultivating wisdom, compassion, and mindfulness qualities that transcend the transient nature of phenomena, we find a different kind of security, a deeper foundation that is not subject to the cycles of birth and death, coming and going. This is the true, lasting legacy. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, consider what teacups in your life you might be clinging to with anxiety about their eventual breaking or transformation. Is it a relationship, a job, a phase of life, your youth, or even your health? Can you experiment with the monk's radical perspective, mentally acknowledging their impermanence, not as a threat, but as a profound reality that paradoxically deepens their value and enhances your appreciation for them now? As the Buddha said, the trouble is you think you have time. The recognition of impermanence doesn't diminish life's beauty. It intensifies it, inviting us to appreciate fully what is here in this precious present moment before it inevitably transforms and passes. This deep acceptance allows us to live more fully, love more deeply, and ultimately find a profound peace in the face of life's beautiful, ceaseless flow. The story of the Buddha and the robe offers a powerful and counterintuitive teaching on the true nature of generosity, dana in Pali, and compassion. In a world often driven by material acquisition and outward displays of wealth, this parable gently yet profoundly redirects our understanding of giving. It highlights that the true essence of generosity lies not in the value of the gift itself, nor in giving to those who expect it, but in the wisdom of discerning genuine need and the transformative joy that arises from alleviating suffering. It's a story about giving with intention, where the greatest merit accrues not to the giver of luxury, but to the giver of necessity. The narrative begins in ancient India, during a time when the Buddha traveled extensively, disseminating his profound teachings across diverse villages and towns. His simple yet radical wisdom attracted a vast number of followers, many of whom were deeply moved by his insights and chose to renounce their worldly lives, becoming monks and disciples under his compassionate guidance. His presence was a magnet for those seeking truth and liberation, irrespective of their social standing or material wealth. One day, while the Buddha was staying in a small, unassuming village, a wealthy merchant heard of his presence. Intrigued by the Buddha's reputation and deeply inspired by the transformative power of his teachings, the merchant decided to visit him. He wished to offer a gift, not merely out of tradition, but as a sincere token of his profound respect and gratitude. In his desire to honor the Buddha, the merchant spared no expense. He brought with him a beautifully woven, luxurious robe, crafted from the finest silk, richly adorned with intricate patterns, a garment fit for royalty, symbolizing the highest possible offering from a man of his standing. The merchant approached the Buddha with utmost reverence, bowing respectfully before presenting the exquisite robe. "Lord Buddha," he intoned his voice, filled with sincere devotion, "I wish to offer you this robe as a sign of my gratitude for your teachings. Please accept this humble token of my respect." The Buddha looked at the magnificent robe, its silk gleaming in the sunlight, and then at the merchant, his gaze filled with a gentle, discerning smile. He sensed the merchant's genuine sincerity and his deep desire to give to express his profound respect. However, the Buddha himself lived a life of utmost simplicity, embodying the principle of non attachment and detachment from material wealth and luxury. His needs were few, and he consistently taught his followers the virtue of contentment with what is sufficient rather than an endless pursuit of more. "Thank you for your kind gesture." The Buddha said, his voice soft yet firm, his smile unchanging. "However, I cannot accept this robe. It is far too extravagant for a simple monk like me. I am content with the robe I already wear." The merchant was visibly surprised, perhaps even a little disheartened, by the Buddha's unexpected refusal. He had anticipated acceptance, even gratitude for such a lavish offering. "But Lord Buddha," he protested, still earnest in his desire to express reverence, "I offer this robe out of profound respect for you. Surely you deserve the best that I can give." He genuinely believed that the value of his offering reflected the depth of his devotion. The Buddha, still smiling, responded with a teaching that transcended mere material exchange, guiding the merchant towards a higher form of generosity. "If you truly wish to honor me and to gain true merit," the Buddha replied, "there is another, more profound way you can utilize this gift. Take this robe and offer it to someone who is truly in need, someone who lacks even the basic clothing to cover themselves and protect against the elements. That, my friend, would bring far greater merit and profound joy." The merchant paused, his initial confusion giving way to a dawning realization. The Buddha's words illuminated a deeper truth about compassion and the true purpose of wealth. He began to understand that the essence of giving was not about offering gifts to those who already had enough or to gain personal spiritual accolades, but about directly alleviating the suffering of those in genuine need. "Thank you, Lord Buddha," the merchant said, bowing deeply, a new understanding settling in his heart. "I will do as you say." The merchant took the luxurious robe and, with a transformed perspective, sought out someone truly deserving of its warmth and comfort. He eventually found a poor man in the village, shivering uncontrollably in the biting cold, clothed only in tattered rags. Without hesitation, the merchant handed the exquisite robe to the poor man, who was utterly overjoyed and profoundly grateful. The simple act of receiving such a gift, especially one that addressed a fundamental need, brought immense relief and dignity to the recipient. The next day, the merchant returned to the Buddha, his heart brimming with a newfound warmth and a deep sense of satisfaction. He shared what he had done, recounting the poor man's gratitude and the profound feeling he experienced. The Buddha nodded approvingly, his eyes reflecting immense wisdom. "You have done well, my friend," the Buddha affirmed. "True generosity is not in giving to those who expect or do not need, but in helping those who are in real need. By sharing your wealth with those who are less fortunate, you have brought true joy and compassion into the world. You have discovered the profound interconnectedness of giving and receiving." The merchant bowed deeply, feeling a warmth in his heart that transcended any satisfaction he had ever derived from his material wealth. He realized that the Buddha's wisdom extended far beyond the simple act of receiving or refusing a gift. It was about understanding the true transformative nature of giving, the profound importance of compassion, and the deep abiding joy that flows from alleviating the suffering of others. The Buddha taught generosity brings happiness at every stage of its expression. We experience joy in forming the intention to be generous, in the actual act of giving, and in recollecting the fact that we have given. This profound insight reveals that true generosity, Dana, is not merely about the transfer of material goods or a transactional exchange. It is fundamentally about the transformation of our hearts and minds through the act of giving. It's an internal alchemy that purifies the mind, reduces self centeredness, and expands our capacity for compassion. The merchant experienced this firsthand, the initial intention to give, the joyful act of finding someone in need, and the lingering sense of satisfaction in recalling his selfless act. Why did the Buddha refuse such a luxurious robe? Zen Buddhism points to several layers of wisdom embedded in his seemingly simple refusal. Firstly, the Buddha consistently embodied the principle of knowing what is enough, the concept of santuti, or contentment. He understood that desires, when left unchecked, are insatiable, leading to an endless cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. By being content with his simple, worn robe, the Buddha demonstrated a profound freedom from the endless cycle of wanting more and better. His refusal was a living sermon on sufficiency, highlighting that true wealth is an internal state, not an external accumulation. Secondly, the Buddha recognized that true generosity is not about social status, public recognition, or performing rituals, but about discerning and addressing genuine need. By redirecting the merchant's lavish gift to someone truly suffering from the cold, he taught that compassionate action should be guided by wisdom and empathy rather than by conventional expectations or the desire for personal merit in the eyes of society. His action emphasized impact over display, utility over luxury. He shifted the focus from the act of giving to the Buddha to the act of giving through the Buddha's wisdom. Thirdly, and subtly, the Buddha's response revealed his deep understanding of the merchant's underlying motivation. The merchant, while sincere, was also likely motivated by a desire to gain merit, spiritual credit, and express reverence in a conventional, outward way. The Buddha, however, showed him a far more profound and direct way to accomplish both by directly alleviating another being's suffering, rather than merely adding luxury to the Buddha's already sufficient life. This redirection offered the merchant a more direct path to inner transformation and genuine spiritual growth. In our consumer-driven culture, we often equate generosity with purchasing expensive gifts for people who already have more than enough. We measure the value of our generosity by its price tag, by its grandness, or by the impression it makes, rather than by its actual impact on alleviating suffering or fostering genuine well-being. The Buddha's teaching in this parable invites us to radically reconsider this approach, urging us to be more mindful and discerning about where our resources, material, emotional, and energetic, can do the most good, where they can genuinely address a fundamental need. The Buddha said, "If you knew what I know about the power of giving, you would not let a single meal pass without sharing it in some way." This profound statement points to the immense transformative potential of generosity, not just for the recipient, but even more so for the giver. Each act of genuine giving, performed with a compassionate heart, weakens our innate self centeredness, and simultaneously strengthens our profound interconnectedness with all beings. It serves as a powerful reminder that our individual well being is inextricably linked to the well being of the collective. When we give, we expand our own hearts. Zen practice actively encourages the cultivation of dana paramita, the perfection of giving. This encompasses not only material generosity, but also the boundless giving of our time, our full attention, our precious energy, and our compassionate presence. Sometimes the most precious gift we can offer another human being is simply being fully present with them, listening deeply without distraction, judgment, or agenda. This selfless giving of presence creates authentic connection and fosters healing in ways that material gifts often cannot. The story also powerfully highlights the importance of discernment in giving. The Buddha didn't suggest that the merchant keep the robe for himself, or sell it for profit, or simply give it to the next person he saw. He specifically directed him to find someone in genuine need. This level of discernment requires us to look deeply and mindfully at situations to understand the true context rather than blindly following conventional patterns of giving that may not actually address real suffering or may even perpetuate cycles of dependency. It requires empathy and wisdom, not just an open hand. The Buddha taught, the greatest gift is the act of giving itself. This statement points directly to the profound interior transformation that occurs when we give from a place of genuine compassion rather than from obligation, social expectation, or ego gratification. When we give in this way without attachment to outcome or recognition, we experience what Buddhists call mudita sympathetic joy in the happiness and well being of others. This joy is pure, untainted by self interest, and expands our capacity for boundless love. Tonight, as you reflect on your own acts of giving, consider whether they align with the profound teaching embedded in this story. Are there ways you might subtly redirect your resources, be they material, emotional, or attentional, towards those in genuine need, where they can have the most profound impact? Can you notice the qualitative difference in feeling between giving that arises from a sense of social obligation or external pressure, and giving that flows spontaneously from a place of deep, heartfelt compassion? Remember the Buddha's compelling words: if beings knew as I know the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor would the stain of selfishness overcome their minds. The story of the Buddha and the robe is a timeless invitation to transform our giving, transforming ourselves in the process, and ultimately contributing to a more compassionate and equitable world. The parable of the two monks and the river is a powerful and universally resonant Zen teaching that exposes the subtle yet pervasive way our minds create unnecessary suffering by clinging to thoughts, judgments, and past events. It vividly illustrates the profound difference between momentary engagement with life's necessities and the heavy burden of prolonged mental agitation. At its core, the story champions the wisdom of letting go, not just of physical actions, but of the internal residue that lingers long after an event has passed. The narrative introduces us to two Buddhist monks, Tanzen the elder and Aikido the younger disciple, embarking on a long journey together through the countryside during the rainy season. Their path is arduous, marked by muddy, flooded roads, making each step a conscious effort. They maintain a mindful silence, for most of their journey, a practice central to their monastic discipline, focusing intently on each step and each breath. This deliberate attention to the present moment highlights their commitment to awareness and detachment. As they round a bend, their serene journey is interrupted by a scene that tests their vows. They come upon a lovely young woman, beautifully dressed in fine silks, and a sash standing at the edge of a large muddy puddle that completely blocks her path. She is visibly distressed, torn between her need to cross and her fear of ruining her exquisite attire or perhaps even falling into the strong current. Her predicament, while seemingly minor, represents the countless small obstacles and dilemmas that arise in daily life. Without a moment of hesitation and without uttering a single word, Tanzan, the elder monk, walks directly to the woman. With an act of spontaneous, unconditioned compassion, he gently lifts her in his arms, carries her across the muddy water, and carefully sets her down safely on the other side. The woman, relieved and grateful, thanks him with a bow and continues on her way. The simplicity and directness of Tanzan's action are striking. He responds to immediate need with practical assistance, free from internal debate or hesitation. The incident is swift, effective, and seemingly complete. The two monks then resume their journey, walking on in silence for several hours. This extended period of quiet is crucial. It allows the unspoken to fester. As they walk, the younger monk, Ekido, begins to appear increasingly troubled. His brow is furrowed in thought, and he repeatedly glances at his companion with a mixture of confusion, disapproval, and perhaps even righteous indignation. His internal turmoil is palpable, a stark contrast to Tanzan's serene demeanor. The silence, far from being peaceful for Ekido, becomes a canvas for his internal struggle. Finally, after hours of carrying this invisible burden, Aikido can no longer contain himself. He bursts out, his voice tinged with accusation. Master Tanzan, as monks, we have taken strict vows not to go near females, especially young and lovely ones. It is dangerous. How could you possibly carry that woman across the river? His outburst reveals his deep fixation on the literal interpretation of the monastic rule and his profound distress over what he perceives as a blatant transgression. He is not merely questioning, he is judging, and that judgment has been fermenting within him for hours. Tanzan, the elder monk, looks at his companion with a gentle, compassionate smile, utterly unperturbed by Ekido's emotional outburst. His response is direct, profound, and utterly transformative. I left the woman at the riverbank hours ago. Why are you still carrying her? Aikido is struck silent by these words. The realization hits him with the force of a sudden enlightenment. He understands in that instant that while his companion had carried the woman physically for only a few brief moments out of compassion and practical necessity, he himself had been carrying her and the weight of his judgment, concern, and mental agitation in his mind for hours. His own peace had been disturbed not by Tanzan's action, but by his own persistent rumination. He had burdened himself with an unnecessary self-created load. The Buddha's fundamental teaching, what we think we become, perfectly encapsulates the core insight of this parable. This truth illuminates precisely why the younger monk's mental burden was infinitely heavier and more burdensome than any physical weight the elder monk temporarily carried. While Tanzan responded to an immediate, tangible need with spontaneous compassion and then effortlessly returned to the serenity of the present moment, Ekido remained hopelessly trapped in the past, replaying the scene over and over again in his mind. He wasn't just recalling the event, he was reliving it, judging it, and allowing it to poison his inner peace long after the actual incident concluded. Why do we like Ekido so often carry these invisible, unnecessary mental burdens? Zen Buddhism identifies several critical factors that contribute to this pervasive human habit. Firstly, there's our deep seated attachment to rules and concepts over principles and compassion. Aikido was so rigidly fixated on the letter of the monastic rule, the prohibitions against touching women, that he completely missed its spirit to cultivate purity of mind intention and boundless compassion. His rigid interpretation blinded him to the genuine selfless nature of Tanzan's action, preventing him from seeing it as an expression of profound Buddhist compassion. He prioritized a static rule over a dynamic, responsive act of kindness. Secondly, our minds have a pervasive tendency toward judgment and mental proliferation, papanka. One initial thought or observation quickly leads to another, and another, creating elaborate, often negative narratives, critiques, and evaluations that pull us far away from the clarity of the present moment. Aikido's initial observation of Tanzan's action didn't just register, it triggered hours of internal commentary criticism and self generated confusion. All of this mental activity was utterly unnecessary and created solely by his own mind, resulting in self created suffering that was far more enduring than the momentary physical act. This constant mental replaying is a drain on our mental and emotional energy. Thirdly, we often struggle with distinguishing between skillful concern and unskillful rumination. While reflection on past actions can be valuable for learning and growth, obsessive dwelling serves no purpose except to disturb our peace and perpetuate negative emotional states. Tanzan exemplifies the ability to act decisively, skillfully, and compassionately when needed, and then crucially to let go completely of the event, returning his mind to the present moment without lingering residue. Aikido, by contrast, demonstrates the unskillful habit of carrying the past, allowing it to overshadow his present experience. In our daily lives, we all carry similar invisible burdens. Consider the argument from last week that we keep rehearsing in our minds, mentally perfecting our retorts or replaying the perceived injustices. The mistake at work that we can't stop replaying, re-experiencing the shame or frustration. The worries about future scenarios that may never materialize, but which consume our present energy with anxiety. Each of these mental patterns is precisely like carrying a person across a river, and instead of setting them down, continuing to bear their weight long after the crossing is complete. This mental clinging depletes our vitality and obscures the beauty of the present. The Buddha's teaching, let go of the past, let go of the future, let go of the present. Crossing to the farther shore of existence, with mind released from everything, do not take up residence in birth and death, eloquently points to the profound freedom available when we release our mental fixations. This isn't about avoiding engagement with life, but about liberating ourselves from the mental chains that bind us to what has already occurred or what has yet to occur. By letting go of these conceptual burdens, we return to the radical simplicity and inherent freedom of the present moment, the only reality we ever truly inhabit. Zen practice offers concrete, actionable methods for putting down our mental burdens. Mindfulness meditation is a primary training ground. Through consistent practice, we train ourselves to notice when we're carrying unnecessary thoughts, judgments, and emotions. We learn to observe them as transient phenomena without getting caught up in their narrative. The practice of labeling thoughts, e.g., simply noting, thinking, planning, judging as they arise, helps us recognize them as mental constructs rather than absolute realities. And crucially, focusing on physical sensations, the feeling of our feet touching the ground, the rhythm of our breath, the direct experience of our body, serves as a powerful anchor, gently guiding us back to the present when our thoughts attempt to drag us into the past or project us into the future. The elder monk Tanzen embodies what Zen calls mushin wushin, often translated as no mind or empty mind. This is not the absence of thought or intelligence, but rather a profound freedom from attachment to thought. It is a mind that is fluid, spontaneous, and unburdened by clinging. He could think clearly when needed to assess the woman's need act, compassionately when required to carry her, and then immediately return to the peaceful emptiness of the present moment without any lingering mental residue. This state of effortless presence and release is available to all of us when we learn the art of putting down what no longer needs to be carried. Tonight, as you settle into rest, bring a gentle awareness to your mind. Notice if you're unnecessarily carrying someone or something that occurred during the day, or perhaps a worry about tomorrow. Is there a conversation you're replaying, a mistake you're fixating on, or a grievance you're nurturing? Can you, like Tanzen, acknowledge these mental burdens and then consciously gently set them down? Feel the profound sense of lightness and spaciousness that emerges when you release these unnecessary weights. Remember the Buddha's liberating words, "Nothing is worth clinging to." In that profound act of release lies true and enduring peace. This continuous practice of letting go is not about forgetting or denying our experiences, but about preventing them from becoming obstacles to living fully and freely in the precious, unfolding present. The parable of the cricket in the temple is a beautiful and subtle Zen teaching that offers a profound insight into the nature of silence, not merely the absence of sound, but a cultivated state of inner stillness and attentive listening. In a world saturated with noise, both external and internal, this story illuminates how true wisdom and profound understanding often reside in the subtle, the overlooked, and the seemingly insignificant, accessible only to those who have learned to quiet their own minds. It's a powerful reminder that what we perceive is often a reflection of what we choose to listen for. The story is set in a bustling Japanese city, a vibrant metropolis teeming with the cacophony of modern life, the constant hum of traffic, the relentless rhythm of construction, the murmur and chatter of crowds of tourists. Yet amidst this sensory deluge, a magnificent temple stood for centuries, its golden roof gleaming under the sun, an oasis of profound peace. Intriguingly, despite being surrounded by relentless urban noise, a palpable sense of profound tranquility permeated its ancient walls. This paradox hints at a deeper truth about the nature of peace itself, suggesting it is not merely dependent on external quiet. One day, a young musician, deeply versed in both the intricate art of music and the disciplined practice of meditation, visited this renowned temple. He was drawn by a peculiar curiosity. He wanted to understand the unique quality of silence that seemed to emanate from this sacred space, a silence that transcended the surrounding clamor. As he sat quietly in a secluded corner of the main hall, he closed his eyes, directing his focus entirely to his sense of hearing, attempting to discern the essence of this special quietude. To his surprise, beneath the occasional muffled footsteps of other visitors and the distant, almost imperceptible city noise, he detected a subtle rhythmic sound. It was so faint, so delicate, it was almost imperceptible to the untrained ear. Driven by an innate curiosity, he followed the sound to its source. To his amazement, he discovered a tiny cricket living in a small crack in one of the ancient wooden pillars. The musician was astounded. How could such a tiny creature, producing such a minute sound, be heard so clearly in this vast echoing temple, especially with the ceaseless din of the city just beyond its walls? This apparent impossibility deepened his intrigue, suggesting that the silence was not merely an acoustic phenomenon, but something more profound. He approached an elderly monk who was diligently sweeping the temple floor, his movements slow and mindful. Venerable one, the musician inquired, his voice hushed with wonder. Have you noticed there's a cricket living in that pillar? How is it possible that such a tiny sound can be heard so distinctly in this large temple with all the noise from the city outside? The old monk smiled, a gentle, knowing expression illuminating his weathered face. Ah, he replied softly, you've heard our little friend. He has lived in this temple for many years. His song is a constant presence. The monk then put down his broom and gestured for the young man to follow him. He led the musician to the very entrance of the temple, where the sounds of the city were more pronounced. Reaching into his robe, he pulled out a single coin, small and ordinary. Watch, he said, and with a slight flick of his wrist, he dropped the coin onto the stone floor. The coin produced a faint metallic clink. Yet at the sound of that single coin falling, nearly every visitor in the crowded temple immediately turned their heads to look their attention, instantly snagged by the mundane sound of money. The monk turned to the puzzled musician, his eyes twinkling with a profound lesson. People hear what they are listening for, he said gently. The coin is no louder than the cricket, but everyone notices it because money speaks a language. All are trained to hear a language of desire and acquisition. The cricket, however, sings day and night a constant melody, but few notice because they are not listening for such voices. They are not attuned to the subtle, the natural, the seemingly insignificant. He continued, his voice deepening with wisdom. Those who quiet their inner noise can hear what others miss, not just crickets, but the whispers of wisdom that speak constantly beneath the clamor of everyday life. True silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of attention, a quality of deep, receptive listening. The young musician bowed deeply, understanding that he had received a teaching far more valuable than any musical technique. He had been shown the profound difference between merely hearing and truly listening, between external quiet and the transformative power of true inner silence. The Buddha taught, "He who is patient is the greatest warrior." This profound teaching relates directly to our capacity for inner silence. The greatest battles we face are often not against external enemies, but against our own internal noise, the relentless chatter of thoughts, the incessant stream of judgments, the clamor of desires, fears, and worries that ceaselessly attempt to drown out the subtle wisdom available in each moment. To cultivate inner silence requires immense patience and discipline, a willingness to sit with the discomfort of our own agitated minds without immediately seeking distraction or engagement. This patience is a form of profound inner strength, allowing us to observe the mental chaos without becoming consumed by it. Why do we struggle so profoundly to hear the crickets in our lives? Zen Buddhism points to several ingrained factors that contribute to this pervasive inner noise and our diminished capacity for subtle perception. Firstly, our societal and personal conditioning often compels us to value certain inputs over others. Just as everyone instinctively noticed the falling coin, but few heard the cricket, we are consistently trained to pay attention to dramatic events, loud voices, urgent demands, and anything that promises immediate gratification or danger. This conditioning leads us to overlook the subtle experiences, the quiet cues, and the gentle whispers that often contain deeper truths and profound beauty. We prioritize the obvious, the impactful missing, the nuanced. Secondly, what Zen calls monkey mind, Xin Yuan in Chinese meaning mind ape, describes the restless, agitated, and constantly jumping quality of our consciousness. Like a monkey swinging incessantly from branch to branch, our minds jump from thought to thought, rarely settling long enough to perceive what lies beneath surface appearances. This ceaseless internal chatter creates a dense veil between us and direct experience filtering reality through layers of concepts, commentaries, and judgments. This internal noise is not merely distracting. It actively obscures our ability to perceive the world and ourselves with clarity, preventing us from accessing deeper states of awareness. Thirdly, our diminished capacity for wonder and sustained presence contributes significantly. Children typically have a natural, unfiltered ability to notice the crickets of the world ants diligently marching intricate cloud patterns, the texture of a leaf, the subtle shifts in light. They haven't yet learned to dismiss the seemingly insignificant, to categorize things as unimportant. As adults, however, we often lose this innate capacity for direct, unfiltered perception. We become preoccupied with plans, worries, and intellectual analyses, causing us to miss the extraordinary that lies hidden within the ordinary. The simple act of breathing, for instance, a profound miracle, often goes unnoticed in our daily lives. Zen practice actively cultivates what might be called active silence or alert receptivity. This is not the absence of thought, which is impossible for a living mind, but rather a profound quality of alert and open awareness that allows us to perceive beyond our habitual conditioned patterns of thinking and reacting. Through dedicated meditation, particularly zazen seated meditation, we train ourselves to notice when we're caught in the incessant internal monologue of the monkey mind. We learn to gently, repeatedly return our attention to the breath, to bodily sensations, or to the simple presence of being. This practice is not about suppressing thoughts, but about developing the capacity to hear what exists beneath and between them, the spaciousness, the stillness, the pure awareness that is always present. The Buddha said, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought. The mind is everything. What we think, we become." This powerful teaching directly links our inner landscape to our external reality. When our minds are constantly filled with noise, with incessant planning, worrying, judging, and rehashing, we become noisy ourselves, distracted, fragmented, and fundamentally unable to access the deeper wisdom, intuition, and profound peace that reside in silence. The external world too often mirrors our internal state. A noisy mind perceives a noisy world, even in a quiet temple. In Japanese aesthetics, there is a profound concept known as ma-jin, often translated as meaningful pause, empty space, or negative space. It refers to the deliberate gaps, intervals, or silences that give form, rhythm, and profound meaning to the whole. In music, it's the silence between notes that creates the melody and rhythm, not just the notes themselves. In conversation, it's the attentive pause, the space of deep listening that allows for profound understanding and connection. In visual art, it's the empty space that frames and enhances the objects. And in life itself, it's the quiet moments of receptivity, the intentional pauses, and the inner stillness that often contain the most profound insights, the most subtle revelations, and the deepest sense of peace. The cricket in the temple, therefore, is not just a sound, it's a testament to the Ma within the temple walls, a space of receptivity. The cricket in the temple represents all the subtle voices of wisdom that are constantly speaking beneath the surface of our frantic awareness. The gentle nudges of our intuition that we ignore the natural rhythms of our body and nature that we override with our schedules, the quiet warnings we dismiss in our haste, and the gentle, extraordinary beauty we habitually overlook in the mundane. When we cultivate inner silence, when we intentionally create that space of attentive Ma within ourselves, these subtle voices become audible. They offer guidance, clarity, and insight that are utterly unavailable to a mind consumed by its own incessant noise. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, enter the quiet of this moment. Can you consciously listen beyond the surface level thoughts and the lingering sounds of your day to the subtle crickets in your awareness? Perhaps you'll notice the gentle rhythmic ebb and flow of your breathing, the subtle sensations in your body that you typically overlook during your busy day, or perhaps even a quiet, intuitive wisdom about a situation in your life that emerges from the stillness. As the Buddha taught, the quieter you become, the more you can hear. In cultivating this precious inner silence, this deep capacity for attentive listening, we begin to discover that the profound wisdom we seek has in fact been speaking to us all along. We simply haven't been still enough, open enough, or attentive enough to hear it. This is the quiet, transformative power of the cricket in the temple. As we draw our time together to a close, let us reflect on the profound journey we've undertaken through these ancient stories of Zen wisdom. Each tale, a luminous facet of understanding, has consistently pointed to the same essential, liberating truth as peace, clarity, and awakening are not distant attainments or special circumstances, but are available right here, right now. They are not waiting for us in some imagined future, nor are they hidden in esoteric practices. They are woven into the fabric of our ordinary unfolding lives, waiting only for our attention to reveal them. Our exploration began with the empty boat, a poignant reminder that much of our suffering stems not from external events, but from the narratives of intention we project onto them. It taught us that when we release the ego's need to assign blame or perceive malicious intent, the anger and frustration that poison our minds simply dissolve. We learned that the punishment of anger is self-inflicted, a burn we choose to endure by grasping the hot coal of resentment. The freedom found in this story lies in recognizing that the world is often full of empty boats, and our peace depends on our choice not to fill them with our own judgments. Then came the monk and the tiger, a vivid allegory for the human condition, suspended between the tigers, of past regrets and future anxieties. This story revealed the extraordinary capacity to find profound joy and presence even in the face of imminent peril. The fleeting sweetness of the strawberry tasted amidst overwhelming danger illuminated that true happiness isn't the absence of challenge, but the willingness to fully inhabit the present moment, savoring its inherent beauty regardless of external threats. It taught us that life's true treasures are found in the now, often overlooked when our minds wander through time. The two arrows offered a clear pragmatic framework for understanding suffering. It distinguished between the inevitable first arrow of pain, the unavoidable hardships of life, and the optional second arrow of suffering, which we inflict upon ourselves through resistance, judgment, and mental proliferation. This teaching empowers us, showing that while pain cannot always be avoided, suffering is largely a choice. By cultivating mindfulness, we can learn to simply be with the first arrow, choosing not to compound it with layers of self created mental anguish, thus liberating ourselves from unnecessary burdens. The deeply empathetic parable of the mustard seed guided us through the universal nature of loss and impermanence. Kisa Gotami's heartbreaking journey to find a household untouched by death ultimately led her to a profound realization. Grief, though personal, is a shared human experience. This story underscores that our most intense suffering often arises from our fierce resistance to the impermanent nature of all things we hold dear. True peace, it revealed, comes not from avoiding loss, but from a courageous acceptance of life's inevitable cycles, allowing us to love more deeply and let go more gracefully. The farmer and the horse demonstrated the profound wisdom of equanimity amidst life's constant fluctuations. The farmer's consistent will see response, regardless of seemingly good or bad fortune, highlighted the folly of premature judgment. This parable taught us that events are never truly fixed in their meaning. What appears to be a misfortune in one moment may reveal itself as a blessing in another, and vice versa. It invited us to cultivate a balanced perspective, a quiet non attachment to outcomes, and to trust in the larger, unpredictable, yet inherently wise unfolding of life. The Buddha and the Angry Man served as a powerful masterclass in non reactivity and emotional sovereignty. Through the metaphor of the unaccepted gift, the Buddha revealed that others' anger and negativity only gain power over us if we choose to accept them. This story fundamentally shifts the locus of control for our emotional states from external triggers to our internal choice. It taught us that holding on to anger is akin to grasping a hot coal. We are the ones who get burned, and that true strength lies not in aggression, but in the unwavering peace of an unperturbed mind. The monk and the teacup offered a radical approach to appreciating life by embracing impermanence. The monk's declaration that the teacup was already broken paradoxically allowed him to cherish it more deeply without the anxiety of eventual loss. This teaching liberated us from the fear of losing what we love, showing that by accepting the inevitable end of all things, we are free to engage with them fully lovingly and without the burden of clinging. It's a profound invitation to find joy in the fleeting beauty of every present moment. The Buddha and the robe redefined true generosity, moving beyond conventional notions of giving to those who expect or already have enough. It highlighted the profound wisdom of discerning genuine need, demonstrating that the greatest merit and purest joy arise from alleviating the fundamental suffering of others. The Buddha's redirection of the lavish gift taught that generosity is not merely a transfer of goods, but a transformative act that purifies the heart, reduces self centeredness, and reveals our interconnectedness. The two monks and the river provided a vivid illustration of the burden of unreleased mental clinging. Aikido's prolonged agitation over Tanzan's momentary act of compassion revealed how much unnecessary suffering we create by replaying past events, judging others, and clinging to rigid rules. The elder monk's simple question, "Why are you still carrying her?" served as a powerful reminder to release mental burdens and return to the lightness and freedom of the present moment, unencumbered by the past. The cricket in the temple gently guided us into the profound nature of inner silence and attentive listening. It showed that true wisdom and subtle truths are often found not in loud declarations or dramatic events, but in the overlooked details and quiet moments of life accessible only to those who can quiet their own monkey mind. The metaphor of people hear what they are listening for taught us to cultivate a receptive present awareness that allows us to perceive the extraordinary beauty and wisdom hidden within the ordinary. These stories, along with the master archer teaching about undivided attention and mastery, the heavy stone, showing us how to find creative solutions by questioning assumptions, the empty cup, reminding us to approach life with receptivity, the farmers will see, highlighting equanimity, the gate of paradise, revealing how heaven and hell are mind-made states, Ryokan's moon, emphasizing the freely available treasures of life, choosing the right boat, guiding us to discern our path by knowing ourselves, and the sound of one hand, illustrating the difference between conceptual understanding and direct realization, all converge on a singular powerful message: the sacred mountain. Our final story beautifully synthesized these themes. It taught us that what we tirelessly seek, enlightenment, peace, ultimate truth, is never found elsewhere or through extraordinary circumstances, but is inherently present in every ordinary step of our journey. The Master's insight that the truth was in the effort of climbing the beauty observed and the challenges faced dissolved the illusion of seeking. It affirmed that enlightenment is not an attainment, but a recognition, seeing the extraordinary within the ordinary, realizing the sacred nature of each and every moment just as it is. The Buddha taught, these three things cannot remain hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. As you continue on your own unique path, may the profound truths illuminated in these timeless stories remain with you. May they serve not merely as concepts to remember or intellectual exercises, but as continuous gentle invitations to experience life with ever greater presence, compassion, wisdom, and a deep, unshakable inner peace. The journey inward through these tales is a journey back to the inherent tranquility that has always resided within you.